I hope today the internet connection is going to be good throughout. So let's get started.
Om Hanau Gunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gita Dhyanam. Om Parthaya Pratibhuditam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshini Bhagavati Ashtadashaadhyayini Amba Tvamanusandadhami Bhagavad Gite Bhavadveshini Namostuti Vyasa Vishala Buddhi Ullaravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Talya Purnaha Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Stotra Vaitrika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gītāmritaduhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dugdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsasudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gītāmritam Mahat Vasudevasudam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishmadronatata Jayadratha Gandhara Nilotpala Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Velakula Ashwathama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Khalu Pandavai Rananadi Kaivartaka Keshava Parasharya Vachas Saroja Mamalam Gītārtha Gantotkatam Nana Jnanaka Kesaram Harikatha Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajjana Shatparairaharaha Pipiyamanam Buddha Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvamsina Shreyase Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayati Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunindra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavai Vede Sangapada Panishade Gayanti Yam Samaga Dhyanavastita Tadgatina Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam na vidussura suragana Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha.
Thank you. So So we saw in the last session that with his very first words, with his very first utterances, Sri Krishna completely blasted Arjuna. And he used very strong words, extremely strong words. He started with Kashmalam. What is this dirt that is there in your mind? And then he called what Arjuna was thinking and what he was doing as ignoble. Anarya. Anarya means, Arya is noble. Anarya means ignoble. And then he also used other words. He said, this is not going to lead you to any higher state of existence. It's not going to lead you to heavens after this life. Asvargyam. And Akirtikaram, meaning this is utmost disgraceful, Arjuna. What you're doing is completely disgraceful. Don't even think about it. And he didn't stop there. And then he continued. He said, don't yield to impotence. Klaibyam. Klaibyam mas magapartha. Don't yield to impotence. Na upadhyate. It does not befit you. This is not something that a kshatriya or even a man should be thinking of. So don't go there. Shudram, very petty. What you're doing is very petty. And all of this, including the symptoms that you so explicitly described, all that shows that you are weak at heart. Hridaya Daurbalyam. So essentially, Sri Krishna, he did not sugarcoat his words. He had to give that jolt to Arjuna. And the message for us from this is that, nowadays, especially in today's environment, especially the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita of today, we have to be very sure whether we are giving out our message in the proper manner. Yes, of course, we should take care not to offend the other person, not to offend the receiving party, not to put ourselves in a situation where, we are then in the defensive about our behavior. But at the same time, when it is required that one should not mince their words, when it is required that one has to give a very explicit message, we should not sugarcoat our words and we should not do anything in terms of softening up the message that we intend to give. Some of the other key messages that I noted down through this, the first chapter and the first few verses of the second chapter, and all of us, I would encourage that we should all note down the messages that we derive, are these. I'll share mine with you. Number one is that we all go through this internal experiences, internal thrills, internal battles, and we also have to be sure of what is the impact of the same outside of us. So while there is this subject and whatever is inside me is subjective in nature, there is also the object world outside me, and I need to be aware of the perspectives, the aspects of the both what is inside me and what is outside me, both the subjective and the objective aspects. The other thing is that the world is out there, the object world, it is going to give stress to us. That is not something that we can wish away. There is no human being who has had a completely stress-free life. So when we are faced with stress, there is stress building up inside us, and that has a tendency to manifest itself in our physical expressions. So Arjuna, if you remember, described all his symptoms, and he talked about how he's feeling. And depending on the level of stress, depending on the level of tension, there are various physical expressions that we indulge in. And we need to be aware that any kind of mental stress that we are having is being seen by people who are outside, by the outside world. The other thing is that every situation has its own viewpoints, there are different ways, different perspectives of looking at that situation. There are different angles through which a situation is seen. We need to be aware of the context that determines the subsequent action, because anything that is acted upon, there is some context behind it. And though the action in most cases is what is, but the mind behind that action, the perspective behind that action could vary. and we need to be aware that we are clear about what is this context and how is it then coming out in terms of the action. And people, like I said, have stress. All of us do. There are three ways we can react, or three ways in which we can face the stress. And that could be either the escape from it, like Arjuna, saying that I want to leave the battle and run away, or we could silently suffer, like in Mahabharata, when the Draupadi Vastraharan was going on, all the Pandavas and the rest of the people in the Darbar, all of them were silently suffering what was. It's not that they didn't feel the pain and the ignominy of what was going on. They felt it, and they felt it deeply, but they just silently suffered. And the third one is that we respond. We use the faculties that have been given to us, and we respond to these faculties. So these are the kind of takeaways that we have had up till now. We also got a few very good leadership lessons from Sri Krishna. He's been listening almost all the time, but even though he has spoken very less, through the few words that he has spoken and through some of the action that he has taken, we got some very good leadership lessons from him. The first one is listening. A leader must listen, must be very clear about what his team members, what his people are saying, and what is going on around him. Listening and observing are some things that are extremely crucial for any leader. Not only does he have to listen and observe, she also needs to diagnose what is going on. And diagnosis happens from what you are listening and observing, and also from previous knowledge that you come in with. For example, in this case, what happened was, Krishna knew Arjuna very well, and he also knew that there will be a time when Arjuna will have to face the prospect of battling and fighting with Drona and Bhishma and all other such respected people. And Krishna, knowing Arjuna, he knew that this is going to impact him. And what did he do? He didn't wait for that golden moment in the middle of the battle, where suddenly Arjuna starts thinking that how am I going to, shoot arrows at Bhishma. He said, let me take care of this problem before the battle begins, or just at the time that it is beginning. And when Arjuna said, take my chariot to the middle of the battlefield, he took it straight in front of Bhishma and Drona, so that the underlying intent was that, see, who are you who are going to fight? Because the reason Arjuna wanted to go to the middle was that he wanted to inspect and he wanted to see. And he said, see, these are the people that you are going to fight. So using that previous knowledge in diagnosis is extremely important. The other thing is, he ensured through his first sentences that he spoke, which we just revised, he ensured complete attention of Arjuna. He ensured that he had grabbed Arjuna's attention. Arjuna, as we all know, was in his own world. He was dwelling in his sorrow, and he was kind of drowned in his delusion. So Krishna had to give him that jolt to ensure that now that he has started speaking, Bhagavan knows that the person he is speaking to is going to be listening. Now the other person has to listen. So after the leader has ensured that he has listened well, and now he has to get his message across, he needs to make sure that he has the attention of the audience. The other thing is delegation. Krishna could have done, Sri Krishna could have fought the war, he could have changed Arjuna's mind in a flash, he could have done a lot of things. He had the power to do it. We saw the qualities of Bhagavan, but he did not. He did not do somebody else's work. When you do somebody else's work, you end up not doing your own work, and that can have a pretty damaging effect in the environment, in the organization, in your life, whatever you are part of. So when you are delegating work to others, you should not end up doing their work for them. At the same time, he's there. He just didn't leave Arjuna and go. He was there for him. He was listening, he was paying attention, he provided moral support, and we will see in future, he gives him a lot of learning through the Bhagavad Gita, And even after that, during the war, Sri Krishna is always there for Arjuna. While he does not do his job, he is there all the time. And he is trustworthy. He can be trusted completely. He does not bring his personal ego into play. He has no personal agenda. He is out there for the larger cause. If it was his personal cause, he needn't have been there at all. But he is there for the larger cause. So zero personal agenda. That's one of the crucial traits of any leader. And to have zero personal agenda, you need to have the bigger picture in your mind at all the time. What is the bigger cause? What is the holistic cause? What is it that I am here for? And that is very crucial. And not only should you have clarity on the bigger cause, you should also have the ability to help others see what the bigger cause is. And finally, Krishna upholds dharma all the time. We have had long discussions about dharma. He makes sure that he is always on the side of dharma and he upholds dharma at all times. So now what does Arjuna do? So now that Krishna has blasted him completely and Arjuna is kind of jolted out of his, the depths of sorrow that he had gone into, but he emerges out of that depths of sorrow, but at the same time, he represents his argument once again to Sri Krishna. It almost appears as if he's reasoning with Sri Krishna. When you go through the next few verses, you will feel that it appears as if he is reasoning. Hey Krishna, what are you doing? Why are you yelling at me? Why are you blasting me? Please see reason. There is, what I'm talking about is not senseless. There is a lot of sense behind what I'm saying. And we'll see what exactly he says. We'll go to verse number 4. Arjuna Uvacha Katham Bhishmamaham Sankhye
Dronam cha Madhusudana Ishubhi Pratiyosyami Pujarha Varisudana Arjuna Uvacha Katham Bhishmamaham Sankhye Dronam cha Madhusudana Ishubhi Pratiyosyami Pujarha Varisudana.
So here we see again that Arjuna is addressing Sri Krishna in two different ways. He first calls him Madhusudana, and we have talked about, Madhusudana is the destroyer of demons. Actually the demon Madhu, but also a number of other demons. And Arisudana, Ari means enemy. And Arisudana is destroyer of enemies. So Arjuna is telling, oh destroyer of enemies, you have destroyed so many enemies. Where do you see enemies in front of us? There are no enemies in front of us. I don't see any enemy here. I see Bhishma, I see Drona. And the last we can do is, we can call them enemies. They are actually Pujarha. Pujarha means they are worthy of worship. Puja means worship. Arha means those who deserve. So these are people who deserved to be worshipped. And how are you expecting me? How can I? Katham aham. How can I shoot and fight with them, and that too with arrows? Ishubhi pratiyotsyami. Ishubhi means arrows, with arrows. Ishubhi, with arrows. How can I use arrows? And how can I wage a war, pratiyotsyami, with these people? Instead of garlanding them with flowers and worshipping them with flowers, how can I shower arrows? I should be showering flowers at them, not arrows at them, is what he is saying. Now, Arjuna, please remember, is a master in our Shastras. So he is a master of our Upanishads, he is a master of all the Shastras. And it is very clearly written in our Shastra, and I'm going to recite a sloka where it is said, Guruhi api avalaptasya karya akaryam ajanatah utpanna pratipannasya parityago vidhiyate. So Guruhi api avalaptasya means a guru who is consumed with, even gurus, sometimes the ego becomes so high and the pride becomes so high, you're consumed with pride and you start thinking too much of your prowess. Now, Bhishma and Drona are not like that, but in the Kaurava army, there are a lot of people who have the place of a guru, who have been consumed with pride. And they are thinking too much of their prowess. Karya akaryam ajanataha. That guru who does not know what ought to be done and what ought not to be done. In this case, Bhishma and Drona completely fall under this. They are not siding with dharma. They may have compulsions and all that, but the fact is that even Yudhishthira had compulsion. The biggest episode was when his wife was being disrobed. That was a huge compulsion, but he stood by dharma at the cost of giving away his family, his brothers, his wife. He stood in spite of whatever the compulsion was. He stood with dharma. Here, Bhishma and Drona have their compulsions, but they have let go of dharma. So what ought to be done and what not ought to be done had become misplaced, and they were not doing that. Utpanna pratipannasya. So one who transgresses what is right and engages in wrong. So once you have left the side of dharma, once you do not know what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, then the chances are that you will engage in wrong and you will transgress the right. You will let go of the right. Parityago vidhiyate. It is said that do not side with such a guru. Do not take his side. And like I said, Arjuna is a master in his in the Shastras. He has read all this. He knows all this. And in the past, he has engaged in battle with his gurus and he has beaten them also. He knows for a cause that ought to be done, it ought to be done. But here he has forgotten about it, completely forgotten about it. And he continues. Yeah, let's go ahead. Guru Natva.
Guru Nahatva hi mahanubhavan.
Guru Nahatva hi mahanubhavan.
Shreyo bhoktum vaikshamapi haloke.
Shreyo bhuktum bhaikshyamapi haloke.
Hatvartha kamastu guru nihaiva.
Hatvartha kamanstu guru nihaiva.
Bunjiya bhogan rudira pradigdan.
Bunjiya bhogan rudira pradigdan.
Guru nahatva hi mahanubhavan. Shreyo bhoktum vaikshamapi haloke. Hatvartha kamastu guru nihaiva. Bunjiya bhogan rudira pradigdan.
So Arjuna now tells Sri Krishna, better indeed in this world, it's better to eat through begging than to slay greats who are so learned. These greats, Mahanubhavan, who are so learned, better than to slay them is to eat through beggary, through taking alms. And even if I kill them, all these desires that I have of wealth, pleasures, and all of that, all of those would be stained with blood. So Maha Anubhavan. So it is actually Anubhavan, Maha Anubhavan, the learned greats. Maha is great and Anubhava is experienced learned people. Those who are desirous of wealth, not the Mahanubhavans, the other people who are desirous, like if I am desirous of wealth. Artha Kaman. Artha Kaman means I have, remember the Purusharthas. We talked about Purusharthas in the introduction. Artha Purushartha, Kama Purushartha. So the goals that we have towards our pleasures, our survival, our pleasures, our desires which are towards our survival and our happiness, our enjoyment. Those are Artha and Kama Purusharthas. And those people who have these kind of desires. And with that kind of desire, if I even kill them, and kill who? These Mahanubhavans, then my hands will be stained with blood. Rudira Pradigdan. So he's actually getting back to Krishna. He's saying, Sri Krishna, you are telling me that my mind is kashmalam, dirty, polluted. But if I kill these people, forget about my mind, my entire body, my being will be stained with blood, which is worse than being dirty, being polluted. So this is a pretty good comeback by Arjuna. But then, even though he has done that, he immediately also shows that there is some confusion. Obviously, what Sri Krishna has said, and before what he said, Sri Krishna was also completely silent. So that has had an impact on Arjuna. So there is a little bit, there is an inkling of confusion that creeps into his arguments now. We'll read verse 2.6. न चैतद्विद्मः कतरन्नो गरीयो
यद्वा जयेम यदि वा नो जयेयुः
यद्वा जयेम यदि वा नो जेयुः
यानेव हत्वा न जिजीविषामः
यानेव हत्वा न जिजीविषामः
तेव स्थिता प्रमुखे धार्तराष्ट्राः
एव स्थिता प्रमुखे धार्तराष्ट्राः
न चैतद्विद्मः कतरन्नो गरीयो यद्वा जयेम यदि वा नो जयेयुः यानेव हत्वा न जिजीविषामः तेव स्थिता प्रमुखे धार्तराष्ट्राः.
So Arjuna says here, he says, I don't know which is better. I can scarcely understand, I can scarcely say which is better. What should we do? Should we conquer them or should we allow them to conquer us? Even these sons of Dhritarashtra who are standing in front of us, after slaying whom we would not wish to live. And they stand in front of us. So should we let them conquer us or should we conquer them? So there are two things that are clear here. One, Arjuna has again embraced Sri Krishna into his argument. He has made him his accomplice. We. He starts using the word us and we to refer to this. And the other thing that is clear is that there is some. So he's saying, what should I do? Should I kill? Should I allow to be killed? So that creep of doubt has crept in. So this has been triggered by one, Sri Krishna's silence and the fact that he has expressed an opposite thought very, very strongly. And one thing also emerges very clearly is Arjuna does not want to do anything without Sri Krishna. If he has to stay and fight, he wants Sri Krishna beside him. If he has to run away and go leave the battlefield, he wants Sri Krishna to go along with him. He's not willing to leave without Sri Krishna coming along. And right now, there is no indication that Sri Krishna is going to go with him, though he has declared, I'm not going to fight, I can die here, I'm going to leave the battlefield and go. But it is very clear that Sri Krishna is not going to be with him. And that is a problem now. So he wants to be with Sri Krishna, he wants Sri Krishna to be with him. And the fact that he acknowledges, he realizes that Bhagavan is not with him, makes him feel that what should I do? Kataranno Gariyo, which is better for us? And he uses the term us. Jayema va jayeyuhu, which means should we conquer them or should we allow them to conquer us? And remember where Krishna had taken the Rath, the chariot, right in front, Pramukaha. So he's standing right in front of Bhishma and Drona. Bhishma, Drona, Pramukaha. So he says, Pramukhe, in face of these Mahanubhavans, what should I do? And this is essentially a turning point in Arjuna's entire presentation. So Arjuna spoke, there's not much that he's going to speak beyond this, except he's going to ask a lot of questions to Bhagavan, as Bhagavan is going to be talking about and enlightening him. Arjuna does not hesitate to ask questions. But other than that, in terms of expressing his delusion, in terms of expressing his sorrow, he's almost done. And this is a turning point in that. So there is a big lesson for us also here, which is that whenever we are doing what we are doing, and if there is this inkling of a thought, this intuition, this gut instinct that we have, this gut feel that we have, which comes up, which is contradictory to what we are doing in terms of our action. Anytime there is something that we are doing, and the gut instinct that rises within us is contradictory to that, we must firstly recognize this confusion. So we see here that Arjuna has recognized this confusion. And once he recognized this confusion, what did he do? He's asking Sri Krishna, what should I do? What should we do? Should I be fighting or should I just not fight? Should I be conquering? Should I not be conquering? He is looking for knowledge. So we should ask our well-wishers, our teacher, parent, Google Guru. If we don't have any other Guru, we have Google Guru. Before we act, whenever there is this kind of a doubt that creeps in, whenever our intuition says something contradictory to what we are doing, please make sure that we find someone to consult with. And that is what Arjuna does now. We'll recite verse 7.
कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः
कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः
पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः
पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः
यच्छ्रेयः स्यान्निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे
यच्छ्रेयः स्यात् निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे
शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्
शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्
कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः यच्छ्रेयः स्यान्निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्.
Arjuna is in sorrow. We can all see that. It's been very, very explicitly displayed. And Arjuna is deluded. We heard about all of it. He was very expressive in sharing all his delusions. Now, both sorrow and delusion are, now please note this, both sorrow and delusion are required for spiritual seeking. We see that all around us. When people go through various travails in life, tribulations in life, when they go through a lot of turmoil, there is more often than not, actually overwhelmingly more often than not, they seek spiritual solace. So sorrow and delusion are required for seeking. Now sorrow has this energy, and which is very contradictory, by the way. It is self-contradicting. On one side we see that Arjuna has completely sapped off all his energies. He is sat down in his chariot, completely drained out. So yes, sorrow does sap energy, but there is an inherent energy that sorrow has. And that inherent energy is that it does not allow the person who is sorrowful to be quiet. At some point, it's like a pressure cooker. It keeps building up, building up, building up. And at some point in time, it announces itself very loudly. So all that has been built up in Arjuna, not just right before the war, right through his life. This warrior who was extremely, pragmatic, who was extremely valiant, one of the best warriors in the world, the Kshatriya, one among the best Kshatriyas in the world. He had to go through a lot of bottling up in his life. He had to suffer a lot. And all of that had been accumulating inside him. And then suddenly he sees and he realizes that in this battle, he has no choice but to fight and kill people who are very dear to him. So this is the time when all that which has been accumulating, the pent-up feelings, the pent-up emotions, it all bursts out. So the sorrow energy that is there within sorrow, at some point in time, all of that pent-up energy bursts out. It just can't keep quiet. It explodes. And that is the time when it creates a sense of urgency. There is emergency situation. Okay, 911 kind of a situation, or 100 kind of a situation. It's an emergency situation. There's a sense of urgency. Now, the other aspect that we are talking about here is delusion. Delusion is something which, is there. It doesn't accumulate. It doesn't express itself. It can be, a human being can be deluded for entire life and pass away and keep going and don't know whether there is, other life. He'll come to the other life, again continue to be deluded. A life or more than one life can be spent deluded and nothing can happen to it. It can remain undiscovered. It needs to be discovered. Not only does it need to be discovered, it needs to be acknowledged also. But sorrow is something that at some point in time or the other, the person who is sorrowful will not be able to contain it. So for a spiritual pursuit, what is required is 1, sorrow, 2, delusion, that the person doesn't know, and the knowledge that I am deluded, and the acknowledgement that I am deluded. Here we see that Arjuna, he has acknowledged that, yes, I am deluded. He's recognized it and he has acknowledged it. So all the 3 requirements that are there for him to start this spiritual pursuit. Till now, he's a master of the Shastras, yes. He's a Kshatriya, yes. He's a warrior, yes. He's a valiant king and a prince, yes. But he has not really launched into a spiritual pursuit. Now, he has the ingredients that can help him get started in his spiritual pursuit. But is that enough? Is having this ingredient to start enough to realize the benefits of the pursuit? That we will see in a moment. So when you have this kind of a realization, when you know that you have that, either you realize that the sorrow that you have has come to a level that it's going to burst out and you take some action before that, and you also know that you have a lot of delusions which you need to fix and you take an action before that. What is the kind of action that such a person takes? That if the person doesn't take in a voluntary fashion, it becomes inevitable. He can't help it. It becomes forced. And that is to seek guidance. That is what we saw here. Here, when we go through the meaning of the words, we will see that Arjuna is seeking guidance from Sri Krishna. This combination of sorrow and delusion and the knowledge that I am deluded, it forces action. Only delusion, it can get postponed. Like I said, it can get postponed indefinitely. But sorrow creates that sense of urgency. And this step or this action that is taken by this person who has started the spiritual pursuit, that is called Guru Upasadana. This action of asking somebody, this action of seeking help is called Guru Upasadana. And we see it all around us. We see biggest corporate leaders, seek executive coaches where they'll say, can I have an executive coach who will help me be more successful in my job? We see the best of sportsmen. Virat Kohli has a coach. We see among the best geniuses in sports of our time is Roger Federer, for those of you who follow tennis. And he always has had a coach assisting him and guiding him. And in fact, through this Arjuna journey, Roger Federer is also a great example for us to think about and follow. And we will come to some of those examples. So this seeking the help of a guide, seeking a help of a mentor, a coach, somebody who is a teacher, is called Guru Upasadana. Guru is teacher. Upasadana means approaching the teacher. So, like I said earlier, approaching the teacher is great. It's really good. We acknowledge that we need somebody to help us. That's fantastic. But is that enough? Will it help us ensure that we also realize the teacher is going to teach us? Now, Sri Krishna is going to teach Arjuna, and he's going to teach all of us too. We have approached. That is why we are sitting here in this satsang. We have already, for our various reasons, we have approached already, and we have said that we seek this guidance from you. But are we going to receive the guidance? Are we going to let that guidance flow through us and acknowledge and then be able to use it successfully in our lives. For that, there are certain prerequisites. And we need to make sure that we put in our bit to develop these prerequisites. These prerequisites or these qualities, they are collectively called sadhana chatushtayam. Sadhana is a pursuit, chatushtayam, fourfold qualities. So what are these? The first of them is viveka. Viveka means discrimination or distinguishing. Distinguishing or discriminating between what? Between what is temporary or ephemeral and what is permanent or nitya. We talked about short-term, shreyas, preyas. We talked about ephemeral, which is short-term, short-lived and permanent. We spoke about happiness, which is deep within us and which is everlasting, and that is the Paramapurushartha. How do we distinguish what is it that helps us towards the Paramapurushartha or everlasting happiness, and what is it, those ephemeral small little joys that keep coming and going? So that ability to discriminate between the permanent and the impermanent or ephemeral is viveka. The second of the sadhana chatushtayam is vairagya. Vairagya means dispassion. Dispassion towards what? Not being passionately attached towards what is impermanent, what is ephemeral. All of us have a tendency to get very deeply attached to things which are temporary. Yes, it is very hard. All of us go through that process. But the more dispassionate we get, the better we get towards ensuring that we get the fruits of the spiritual path that we are undertaking. Vairagya is dispassion, not being passionately attached towards the impermanent. What is not permanent? What is ephemeral? The third one is called Shamadhi Shatka Sampatti. Shamadhi Shatka Sampatti. Shamadhi is Sham Adi, which means it is Shama and a few others. Shatka. Shatka means sixfold, 6 of them. Sampatti means inner wealth. So these are also required. And so basically what we are saying is that the third element of the sadhana chatushtayam itself has 6 subdivisions or 6 sub-inner qualities and inner wealth which are required. The first one, like we said, is Shama. Shama means control of the mind. It is extremely important. This mind is a monkey mind. It will keep going all around. So oftentimes when I'm in video conferences where I'm not speaking, like here I am speaking. So I need to do what I have to do. But when I'm not speaking, and like most of you, when my video is off, the first distraction is what is my phone. So I'll be either looking at my WhatsApp, or I'll be looking at the news, or I'll be texting somebody. Okay. So controlling that, controlling the mind which wants to do something else is Shama. The second one is Dhamma. Dhamma means controlling the senses, the 5 sense organs. The sense organs which help us perceive what is outside of us in the object world. We talked about it earlier also. The 5, all these that help us perceive and help us receive the signals from outside, can we control them? So if I like coffee and I keep drinking coffee, and you have to control it, because what happens is I can drink coffee because I like it. I can have, maybe 2 cups of coffee, and I love it so much that I can have 6 cups of coffee. But can I have 30 cups of coffee? Maybe after the 20th cup of coffee, it will start tasting bitter, or maybe after the 25th, but definitely after maybe the 100th. At some stage, if the more and more we feed our senses, the senses will start revolting. The same thing that we loved and the same thing that we were extremely attached to and fond of, that will appear to be not tasty enough in the case of coffee, or in the case of other things, not worthy enough for our time. So we know that that is what will happen at some point in time. So it is better to control it earlier itself, because anyway at some point in time we are not going to like it. It is ephemeral. So Dhamma means controlling the senses. Uparama is willingness to give up distractions. So, like we said earlier, we live in an object world. We are a part of the world. So, outside of us, there is a lot of there is no shortage of distractions. If we have that alert tone in our WhatsApp, even if I'm not looking at that WhatsApp, that alert tone is going to make me look at it. And that is a distraction. That is Uparama. So willingness to give up distractions, which are taking us away from our path, the path that we have committed to. So if it is the spiritual path that we are talking about now, anything that takes us away from the spiritual path, we need to give up those distractions or minimize those distractions. The fourth one is titiksha. Even after we practice control of the mind, control of the senses, we do not get distracted. Even after that, a lot of things will get perpetuated upon us. We don't have a choice. Titiksha is the forbearance. Titiksha is the patience. Titiksha is the endurance, the fortitude. The quality of forbearance, endurance, fortitude, patience that help us bear with whatever comes to us without our choice and without us being able to help it. That is titiksha. Life is unfair. And when this unfair life throws upon us the things that we do not like, then we need to have the forbearance to, the titiksha to deal with them. The fifth one is shraddha. Shraddha means dedication, faith. So dedication, faith to what? To this path, whatever the path may be. So in the case of Roger Federer, the path of playing tennis. For him to be dedicated to that path, he has to give up a lot of other things, but immensely dedicated to that path, faithful to that path. So if we have taken up the spiritual path, then we need to be faithful to it. We need to be dedicated to it. And the last one of the Shamadhi Shakta Sampatti is Samadhana. Samadhana means the ability to focus or concentrate, the ability to zoom in and concentrate on what we are doing. Like Arjuna had the ability to be able to look at the eye of the reflection of an eye of a revolving fish and shoot the actual eye which was above. So that kind of focus. So these are the sixfold inner wealth, sampattis that are required. And the final, the fourth sadhana chatushtayam is mumukshutva. Mumukshutva means desire for liberation, desire for what ultimately we need. At one stage we are saying we should do away with desires, but we must have the desire for that ultimate goal, the desire for that parama purushartha, the desire for that freedom, the desire for that revelation. I want that. That is very, very required. So these are the sadhana chatushtaya, or the qualities that help a person who has already started off on a spiritual path to achieve the fruits of that path. And why spiritual path? Any path. So I'm going to take some time to explain this. We spoke about the example of Roger Federer. So what does Roger Federer do? He plays tennis. He's a tennis genius. Now, and he's a winner. Not only is he a tennis genius, he's a winner. If he plays a tournament, if he enrolls himself in a tournament, and the first point, he loses. The second point, he loses. The third point, he gets angry, throws his racket, and he says, what the heck is going on? What has he displayed? He had displayed that he has no vivek, which means he's getting worked up about that point. He's here to play a tournament. A tournament comprises of that point, the game, the set, which has 6 games, and then other 3 or 4 or 5 sets in that particular match, and then probably another 5 or 6 or 7 matches in that tournament. So if he has to win the tournament and he gets frustrated with 1 point, then he is not having any vivek, or this, he's not able to see that this is just a temporary thing. It's okay to lose a point, but I need to win the game. It's okay to lose a game, but I need to win the set. It's okay to lose a set, but I need to win the match. So that dispassion towards, the various obstacles that are coming in his way. The ability to discriminate, he has. The dispassion, he has. And the other way around, he wins it. Does he feel so great about it that he starts celebrating and dancing around that the next game he loses? No. He continues to be focused on the larger goal. His larger goal is to win the tournament. And beyond that tournament, his larger goal is to play great tennis in his life. So actually, when you look at Roger Federer, when you will see he has the Viveka, he has the Vairagya, he has all the 6 Sampattis. He has Shama, which is, he can control his mind and focus on the game. He has Dama, which is, he doesn't get distracted with all kinds of sensual aspects that are there. He has the willingness to give up anything, that distraction that presents itself to him forcefully. And he has, when things are not going his way, when he's losing point after point, game after game, comes back. In the 5th set, come back. And the 5th set goes into, 10 games, 14 sets, and so on and so forth. You keep fighting and you keep coming back. You have that Shraddha, the devotion, the faith, and the Samadhana, which is the focus. And that ultimate desire, the Mumukshutva, to win that tournament. And after all of this, does he get that ego into place and start, forgetting that he has another 10 tournaments to play? No, he's not. He's the most grounded of sportsmen that we have seen. So what we have seen is that people who have this, not only are they able to enjoy the fruits of that path, they are also able to have that groundedness, that they are rooted to the ground. And that is what helps one in the long run go towards the Paramapurushaya. Gets the deep inner satisfaction in terms of converting the actions that we are taking into converting the karma that we are doing into karma yoga, as we spoke earlier, and finally to get that long lasting happiness. So essentially, one may have the urgency because of sorrow. One may have discovered that, one is deluded, but one may also go and seek guidance, get a coach. But realizing this knowledge requires these 4 qualities. And when you don't have these 4 qualities, then the pursuit becomes nothing but an intellectual or an emotional effort that becomes wasted in the long run. And we now see that Arjuna has these qualities. And when you have these qualities, you are able to experience the knowledge that you are getting. There are 2 kinds of knowledge. One is knowledge that we hear about. So if the teacher has come and lectured, in the class, and I've heard it, hearsay, and it remains with me for some time, maybe to write the exam and clear the exam. After the exam, I may forget the knowledge after the class. I may forget the knowledge after the exam. But something that remains with me is experiential. In Sanskrit, what remains with me, what is experiential, is called aparoksha jnana or vijnana. And what is something that goes away, or what is indirect, which is somebody has told me about, which I don't know or I have not experienced, is paroksha jnana. So through these qualities, through the sadhana chatushtayam, when we take action to follow any path, be it spiritual path or any other path, a short-term goal or a long-term goal or a lifelong goal, whatever it may be, it gives us the ability to convert that knowledge into something that is an experience. I would request you to go back and remember, in one of the satsang I talked about Sri Rajagopalachari's talk before Sahasranama, and I have sent it to you in my notes. So there you will see this knowledge and experience and wisdom. So please do go through it once again when you have the time. So Arjuna, in spite of what comes out of Arjuna in terms of his statements, his utterances, his questions, his doubts, in the Bhagavad Gita, including, in chapter 1 when he is completely giving up, in spite of all of that, it is very clear that he has these 4 qualities. And it comes out again and again. Not only, in fact, if we may, if you are all clear, we can even spend one of our classes going through chapter 1 again and looking at where all is Arjuna displaying these sadhana chatushtaya through his delusion. Till now what we have done, we have covered chapter 1 saying Arjuna is deluded. All of it shows his delusion. But we can also see it from a different angle where all of that chapter 1, whatever he talks, in a deluded, by the way, he is deluded. But the underlying sadhana chatushtayam that he possesses comes out very clearly. The other step where it comes out is, it also comes out when if you follow the story of Mahabharata after the war, the way Arjuna and his brothers rule over the kingdom. They actually do not rule. They are true rulers. Unlike politicians of today and unlike many other kings, they serve the country. They serve the nation. They serve their kingdom. And that aspect of service by the kings come only when they have these qualities. Otherwise, you will be very clearly seeing that a person is ruling. When you have a ruler with these qualities, it will be very clear that the person is serving and not ruling. And it is not easy to remove these aspects of delusion that come and cloud these qualities. So one of the things that we saw here is, even though Arjuna has these qualities, his sorrow and his delusion has formed a layer, a cloud, and has prevented him from acting like a person who has these qualities. And depending on the depth to which it has gone, it varies in terms of how it comes out. There's a beautiful example that is there in some of our books, which talks about if a person is deeply deluded versus a person is shallow delusion is there, right? So if there is too much delusion, the example that is given to remove it is, how does a fetus, come out of the womb and become a baby? It's a 9-month-long process of growth and exploration, and then leaving that womb and coming out. It's a very difficult process, right? That's why it's called labor, right? So when it is deeply ingrained, it's like a fetus emerging into life form. When it is a little bit less ingrained, then it is like a thick layer of dust in the mirror. It takes an effort to wipe it out to be able to see your reflection. And when it is just there, like in Arjuna's case, for example, it's like a smoke covering the fire. Even when there is a small breeze, that's good enough to remove the delusion, like a smoke covering the fire. So it is important for us to recognize how deep our delusion is also, because the deeper our delusion, the more the effort required to remove it. So we must inculcate in our spiritual journey the sadhana chatushtayam, and part of which is the samadhi, sham adi, sakta sampatti, to ensure that we continue fruitfully gaining the benefits of this journey. That is very, very important. So I would like you to make sure that this is something that I kind of brought in from my Vedanta course. This is not there in Bhagavad Gita. So I would request you to go through this once again. You will not find this in your Bhagavad Gita book. Let's read. Can we recite the verse once again before we go into the word by word meaning? Let's recite it once again, the full thing. Karpanya-doshopahatah svabhavah
Prichhami tvam dharma sammudachetaah.
Prichhami tvam dharma sammudachetaah.
Yat shreyahasya nishchitam bruhi tanme.
Yat shreyasya nishchitam bruhi tanme.
Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam.
Shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam.
Karpanya doshopahatah svabhavah. Prichhami त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः यच्छ्रेयः स्यान्निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्.
So after going through all that he has gone through, after that diarrhea of thoughts and words that Arjuna went through, and speaking out his mind, expressing his sorrow, expressing his delusion, he now seeks guidance. So karpanya dosho pahata swabhava, my nature has been taken away by self-pity. Prichhami tvam dharma sammuda cheta, with a mind that is confused towards my duty. Yachre yashyat nischitam bruhi tanme, what is surely and permanently good for me, please tell me decisively. Nishchitam shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam, I am your disciple, please teach me, I surrender completely to you. So swabhavaha, my nature, my real nature, and Arjuna knows, and everyone knows that Arjuna's swabhava is what? The fearless warrior. And where is that fearless warrior here? Can't be seen. Hands are trembling, the bow has slipped out, sweaty, burning skin, can't stand, the limbs have given way, he's sitting in the chariot, he has cast away his bows and arrows. So that fearless warrior is gone, is destroyed, taken away. Apahata means obliterated. He says, my real nature has been obliterated. By what? By karpanya dosha. Karpanya means self-pity. It also means dainyam, the deep compassion that we talked about in last class, misplaced compassion. So self-pity and misplaced compassion. And Arjuna acknowledges that it is a dosha. Dosha means it is a fault. I have this fault. And this fault has taken away my real nature. It has destroyed my real nature. And then he says, dharma sammuda cheta. Because of this, what has happened? My cheta means my mind. That has become sammuda. It has got clouded. It has got deluded. And my mind has got deluded towards what? Towards my dharma. Towards what my duty and what should I be doing? How should I? We remember we talked about dharma. Dharma means the intrinsic nature of anything that makes it what it is. So Arjuna says, my intrinsic nature is a real warrior. That is me. But this thing which has happened to me has taken it away. So I'm not my intrinsic self now. And he acknowledges that. And because of that, and now what he's saying, he is pulling back from taking action. And he's seeking help. Prichhami tvam, I seek guidance. Tvam, from you. Prichhami. Prichhami means seeking guidance from Sri Krishna. And then he says, tell me decisively. In fact, Arjuna says this multiple times in the Bhagavad Gita. It will keep coming every now and then. Ya nishchitam bruhi. Tell me, please tell me, what is it? Which is it that is decisively good for me? Please tell me decisively. And tell me what? Shreya asya. Shreya means is good. Asya means for me. And Shreyas is what? We talked about Shreyas. Shreyas means that is permanently good. That is pakka, sure. Surely good. So what is it that is really good for me in the long run? Please show me that. And I really want to do what is good. I don't want to do what I want to do. Right now, I want to do something else. I've told you what I want to do. But I want to do what is good. I don't know what is good. I'm completely confused. Please tell me decisively. Shadimam, he says instruct. Shadimam means instruct me. And he's being very clear. He's not asking, this is not doubt clarification. He's asking for direction. He's asking for clear, specific, instruction-oriented direction. Now, doubt is something where I can have a doubt saying, hey, where did I keep my, car keys today? I think I put it in my bedroom. No, I don't know. Maybe, I put it in the drawing room. Is it there in the kitchen? And then finally I'll find it. It's there in my pocket. Sometimes it happens with me. My glasses, I'm wearing it and I'm like, hey, where are my glasses? Especially since I, started having this problem of reading versus seeing. I put my glasses on top like this. You would have also seen this, right? And then I'm like, where are my glasses? And I'll be going around my house looking for it. That is doubt. I don't know where my glasses are. That is doubt. So Arjuna is not focused on doubt here. He's saying, I need instruction. And you need to tell me decisively. And then he says, prapannam. Prapannam means surrender. Shishyasteham, I am your disciple. I am your student. I am your disciple. Arjuna cannot say, you are my guru. He is nobody to, we can't tell somebody else that you are my teacher. That's his choice, no? Whether the person wants to be a teacher or not is his choice or her choice. We can say that I am your disciple. I want to learn from you. After that, whether the teacher accepts or not is up to her. So what does Arjuna do? He says, I am your student. I am your disciple. Shishyasteham. And then he says, I surrender to you. I completely surrender. I am prapannam. Please guide me. So this indicates that Arjuna has that shraddha, the faith. Like I said last time, this is one of my favorite verses. For all of us who have chosen this path of, spiritual progress or anything else to be successful in life. This reminds me of, as a youngster, 19, 20-year-old, when I was in the army, you go on these night navigation route marches, okay? And actually in a real war situation also, you have to, go through at night. And especially if the night is clouded, there are no stars and all that. So you have a compass that tells you the direction. When you choose your compass, you have the choice to make, choose the kind of compass that you want. You have to make sure that it works well, it's accurate. So all of us have the right to choose our guru, choose our teacher. We can assess the teacher. We can, do a summary assessment of the teacher and then say, yes, I want or I don't want. But once you choose the compass, and once we were in the army, when we are at night, pitch dark, you can't see anything. It's completely clouded, no stars, no moon. All you have to do is surrender yourself to the compass. You have no choice. If you don't surrender yourself to the compass, you will be completely lost. You'll probably go straight into the enemy line. It's extremely important to ensure that the compass takes you to the right direction too. If the compass is faulty, then also you're gone. At the same time, once you have chosen the compass, it's very important to surrender to the compass. And this is what Arjuna does here. He surrenders to Sri Krishna and he says, please show me the right way. So when a person takes action, and here Arjuna is taking the action of surrendering. Okay, action can be of two types. One is something which is ignoble, non-meritorious action. And that kind of an action will lead to papa or sin. Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda used to say, he used to say that sin is something after doing which you feel bad about yourself. Okay, it is something like a self-insulting act. Sin is not something where, you go to hell and you go through fire and, spikes and you're put into boiling water and all of that. So this is something which an action after I do something, and after that for an hour or for a day or for 5 days, I'm feeling miserable about it. That is a sin. Something that makes me feel miserable, I do something that belittles myself is a sin. So action can be where I feel bad about that action, or action can be something which is meritorious. Now this meritorious action, that also has two outcomes. One outcome is that both of them lead to punya. Non-meritorious or ignoble action leads to papa or sin. Meritorious action leads to punya. One of those punya is future joy. I get some joy out of it. I get some, short-lived happiness out of it. And the other result is a purified mind. Like I talked about Federer, the way he behaves, the way he acts, you can see he's a gracious loser. He's a gracious winner. He's a embracing player to all others who are there in the circuit. Those are signs of what? A purified mind. He has achieved that purity of mind. He's not an egoist, who comes as I'm the greatest tennis player in the world. He walks into the court. His humility is obvious out there. So this kind of a meritorious action, whether does it lead to short-term joy or whether it leads to purity of the mind, depends entirely on the attitude with which we perform that action. If we perform that action with an attitude where we have said we devote it to the Lord, where we say that prapannam, I submit, with an attitude of submission, that action, that attitude leads to purity of mind. Whereas an attitude of selfish gain, that I want to do this to please myself. I want to eat this because I like the taste of it. I want to win this point because I am the winner here. So anything I do with that sense of aham and mama, I and my, that will, even if it is punya, if it is papa, of course, it is going to lead to sin. But even if it is punya, it will give us some kind of a pleasure in the short run. Some kind of a joy either immediately in the future or maybe 5 years, 10 years down in the future, sometime in the future. But if we do it with that sense of humility, if we do it with that sense of submission, if we do it with the sense of doing it for the bigger power, for the God, whoever your God may be, that bigger power, that bigger cause, then it leads to purity of the mind. In Federer's case, the God is playing tennis. I don't know what his personal God is. I don't know him personally. But all his way of playing tennis is playing those shots is for that game. And I can see that he has that purity of mind. The way he talks, the way he behaves on court, off court, every which way. So the act of submission gives that purity of mind. And if we can find something to submit towards, it will develop that purity of mind in us. So whether it is punya, which expends itself, resulting in future joy, or it is punya, which expends itself in making the mind purer, the heart purer, it entirely depends on the attitude with which that particular action is performed. Thank you very much. Hari Om. We'll finish here today.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om.
Thank you. Any thoughts, comments? I finished 10 minutes earlier, so that's good.
So today, what you told us, the prerequisite of receiving this jnana or moksha seems to be very, very high. I'm a little bit discouraged. So you have to break it into parts which we mortals can swallow one by one.
So, okay, so let's talk about what discourages you.
No, I mean all these things, yeah.
The Shama,
Yeah.
is it the Sadhana Chatushtaya? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. If all these things are already in place, then the person is already, I mean, very near moksha, right?
Okay.
So yeah.
So
What
Deepak,
only discourages me is that I am very, very far from it. Yeah.
so 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 let me tell you this. You know, you are behaving like a tennis player. You're not Federer right now, huh, by the way. You're behaving like a tennis player who lost the first 3 points of the tournament, and he's saying, "Oh my God, the tournament is so far away. I am discouraged." So, see, if we have to follow a Federer, and if our life is a tennis match, if our life is a tennis tournament, the success story or the successful example to follow is a Federer. Similarly, if our life is the life that we are leading, you know, one of the successful examples to follow is Arjuna. We can all be Arjunas, right? So one way is the first way is to say that, yes, I've just started, you know, so what if I've lost the 3 points? That is where you say you have that thing of, no, I'll keep going. The titiksha, the forbear. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. So if you are in a situation where you're saying, hey, this looks too big for me, I'm going to give up. That is when you have that attitude of, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That is one way. The other way is to follow Arjuna and look for somebody who can guide. Step by step guide. And we will see now, you know, a lot more will come, which seem very difficult, very impossible. But haven't we not seen in our lives, even where we have got till now, you know, anyone who is starting off their life will say to reach where you have reached, Deepak, is extremely difficult. When you look back now, yes, it was difficult, but would you say that you couldn't have done it? You have already done it, right? So yes, so in that sense, I think all of us have gone through that, you know, difficult journeys in our life to know well enough how to, you know, keep striving and keep going ahead. That's the only way at the end of the day. And spiritual path is that. But the beauty of, if I look at it the other way, okay, if I look at it the other way, it's such a very clear depiction of, and that's the reason I thought it must be brought in here. You know, it's so important to be aware of these. See, when you're, especially like what are we doing now? This is a spiritual path. And in a spiritual path, to be aware of the sadhana chatushtaya, to be aware of the samadhi shakti sampatti, that itself is a big deal in terms of putting our efforts towards achieving proficiency there. So if you are aware what is viveka, if you are aware that there is something, yes, we know in our life that something is permanent, something is temporary. So if we can slowly but surely start distinguishing between the two, first of all, to know that we should be knowing that there is something permanent, something temporary. So that itself is good for us. So we are one step ahead. So we'll take it one step at a time. Just this awareness is really good. And the Samadhi Shakti Sampatti, it is controlling the mind. In any meditation or yoga that you do, the objective is to control the mind, control the senses. This is any kind of yoga practice that you do. The Samadhi Shakti Sampatti is the fundamental thing that we start off with. So it's not difficult. It is difficult, yet it is not difficult. Is that good enough, Deepak? See, like Arjuna, I'm looking for appreciation from you.
Srini.
Yeah.
So for me, I know we discussed this a few times in the previous classes also. I'm still kind of not comfortable about Arjuna being called disillusioned, right? I'm like kind of struggling with that whole word, because when you go through all the stanzas, all the explanation, he's a compassionate guy, and he's concerned about how to kill his guru, his grandparents, and all those things. And right, I know in all Bhagavad Gita, I'm not saying it's Srini's word, but it's Bhagavad Gita. It's constantly, every book says he's disillusioned, right? Isn't it a bit unfair to call him that, right? It's because his intention is to fight. His intention is towards dharma. But the only thing what comes in between at that moment in Mahabharata is that his compassion about not able to shoot arrows at his teachers and everybody, and or his brothers or his uncles and everybody, and right. I know a few times it came up in the last few times too, right? Having Arjuna being called the disillusioned kind of a thing, right?
So, see, yeah, he has these qualities. He has, he has sadhanata tushtaya. He has that, right? And that is why, I mean, if Bhagavan Krishna himself has to give him the knowledge of the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, obviously he's a very, very, very accomplished person. Not just a king or a ruler, but an accomplished human being. Absolutely, yes. But please remember that the fact is, whatever we say, what does the Bhagavad Gita tell us? It just says, it just presents fact to us. The fact is that there is this soldier, this warrior, who commanded his charioteer to take the chariot to the middle of the battlefield. And once he goes there, he loses it. That is a fact. He loses it. He himself says that my hands are trembling and blah, 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 all of that, right? We don't have to repeat it. So, and he sits down, he casts away his weapons. He behaves very, and like he says here, he acknowledges that, right? He says that this delusion has clouded my mind towards my duty. And that is nothing but disillusionment. So, not only does the Bhagavad Gita says that, because Arjuna actually admits it to Shri Krishna.
I see.
And when you are at that point of performing your duty, when you have come, when everything has kind of synergized around it, the entire, imagine a hockey captain or a soccer captain, everything is synergized, everyone is playing, a beautiful drill that has gone from, your defense point to your goal post to the opponent's goal post. A fantastic sequence has taken place. That when the time comes to shoot the ball into the goal, this chap just stands there and says, I cannot score. He's disillusioned. That is the reason he's disillusioned, not his entire personality. At that moment, like we know, life is a sequence of events. We are saying that Arjuna is disillusioned at that point in time in his life. He's not a disillusioned human being.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Srini, when you spoke about coaches, I think I heard it like, you cannot choose your teacher, but you can be a disciple. I would like to understand that a little better. Is that what you said? I'm a little confused there.
I understand your question, so let me clarify.
Yeah.
So what we are saying here is that we can choose to be a student, whoever the teacher may be. Of course, we can also, like I also said, that I have to choose my compass carefully, right? I have to choose my teacher too. So I have the right to choose my teacher. I have the right to reject someone who I don't want to be my teacher. That is absolutely fair. I'm not saying that I should not be choosing my teacher. But let's say once I know who I'm going to, let's say Roger Federer knows that he's going to choose, ABC. In fact, before this class, I wanted to look up Roger Federer's coach's name. I forgot. Okay. So let's call him ABC. So Roger Federer says that I'm going to choose ABC as my coach. Once he chooses him as the coach, then he can say that I am your student. You cannot tell your teacher that you are my teacher. See, this is the first step towards submission. The reason I made this point is because ultimately, what do? You submit to your teacher. But the first step towards submission is where you say that I choose you as my teacher. And I request and I look forward to you choosing me as my student. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Hi, Srini. You spoke about sorrow in today's session,
Right?
and you said it builds up, and once it builds up, it's like a pressure cooker, and then it has to come out. We are not able to contain it. I slightly disagree there. What I feel is each one of us deals with sorrow in a different manner. And can we generalize it like this, that, okay, fine, it will come out in one way or the other? Can we say that?
Yeah, see, no, typically if one has sorrow, if one has sorrow inside, if one is sorrowful, yes, it finds a way to express sooner or later at some stage in life.
Express, right, but explode.
Yeah, explode too. You know, if it does not express, then yes, explode. It depends on the level of sorrow. It depends on the intensity of sorrow. It depends on whether it has been expressed proactively or not. Like in Arjuna's case, that is why Bhagavad Gita takes an extreme example of Arjuna. It doesn't take Yudhishthira, right? Why is it that Yudhishthira is the king, by the way? And I love the way Deepak pointed out that Arjuna is the de facto king, but Yudhishthira is the king. It doesn't take Bhima. Why is this Arjuna guy so important? Because Arjuna is the one who allowed sorrow to build up and build up and build up and build up. Yudhishthira didn't allow that. He was proactive in dealing with his sorrows. He was proactive in behaving in a way that is, aligned with dharma, so that the sorrow didn't go to a stage where it had to burst. So this is an extreme example of a person who allows the pressure cooker to build up. If you have that, what is it called, that thing on top of the pressure cooker which allows the steam to escape, then it's fine. But if you shut it down, then it will explode.
Thanks.
So this is an extreme, Arjuna is an extreme example. And one of the toughest lives of any human being, If Arjuna can do it, Deepak, so can all of us.
Thank you, Srini.
Okay, great. Any other, one last or any other point, comment, thought? Okay, thank you all. We'll call it a day today. See you all next Saturday. Hari Om.